Okay, just this.
Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. Got Leo, the Lion, Zagami back, and he's bringing it. We've got a very good show for you today. The Vatican is warning of the rise of occult and satanic threats that are coming to America. So, Leo, thanks for coming back on again.
Thank you for having me on. And yes, the warning, of course, is for America, but also for the rest of the world. Of course, here in America, though, we had a very big increase in the number of practicing exorcists in the last few years, which is a bad sign, especially due to what I had envisioned already during the pandemic. I mean, you leave people in front of Cyber Satan for too long. That's not a good place to be. Now, it's important to understand that in the month of May, the Vatican will gather an international group of exorcists in Rome. And this year, in fact, the topic is mostly focused on the AI and how the AI is aiding Satanists. And that, as you know, is a topic that I have touched with a few of my books, volume 6.66, volume 7, and volume 9. In particular, volume 6.66 is relevant for today because in this book, I discuss the specifics of the rite of exorcism, of course, the one practiced by the Catholic Church, which in the Christian world is the more relevant, the Romanorum rite, which basically has been with us for over 4 centuries. And then you have for each, religion, their own way of exorcising the devil. But in fact, this year, for the first time, the Vatican is also opening their doors to non-Catholics and non-Christians alike who want to join in the battle against Satan. And on the 13th of March, he guested a few representatives of the International Association of Exorcists. So it's been maybe an important move. However, I am a bit disappointed that the Pope decided to dedicate to this such an important subject only half an hour. I mean, these people arrive from all over the world. You expect them at least, to spend with the Pope a few hours. However, it seems to me that there is some kind of contradiction here from the, the materialistic economic side of the Vatican, which, by the way, I've talked about in my latest article on leozagami.com, which you can go and check out, because he just appointed a former executive director from the Edmund de Rothschild private banking group to be in charge of the Vatican Bank. Now, this guy was also connected to Jeffrey Epstein through Ariane de Rothschild, who, of course, was married with Edmund de Rothschild and then took on the whole of the group and later involved also Jeffrey Epstein because she wasn't that great in doing this business. Let me explain. There is 2 different factions of the Rothschilds. There is the French and English faction, and then there is the French and Swiss faction, which is this one. And this guy, Francois Pauli, is now the new head of the Vatican Bank. And because he was involved with Epstein, it seems a little bit weird, to say the least, that you have a guy like that now in charge of the Vatican Bank. But to me, I think there is definitely a paradox here because, of course, when you're talking about money, you're talking about something that is directly connected with the devil. Remember the interview that Steve Bannon made with Epstein? At the end of the interview, he said, "Are you the devil?" Because he was so good with his, business side of things that the guy was wondering if he was actually the devil himself. And he had all the characteristics. So it's like the Vatican is divided between two factions. The faction of your ordinary priest, your parish priest, who wants to fight the demonic, which is rising. And of course, this International Association of Exorcists went to the Pope with a specific message, because you have to understand that with the arrival of the internet, the satanic sects have been able to recruit a lot more members. And groups like, for example, the Ordo Templi Orientis of Aleister Crowley, or the Temple of Set of Michael Aquino, or many other New Age oriented sects of more recent. But the exorcists are warning, of course, the Pope that there needs to be at least one or more exorcists for each diocese, because the increase in demand has been astonishing, Michael. And actually, when I say Michael, I say a name which is very dear to the exorcist. The Archangel Michael is, of course, very important. Now, when I was emailing with your wife, she told me she was interested in knowing also regarding the fact that, the exorcists make a point when they exorcise to get the real name of the demon they're fighting, because maybe people don't know that, and this is going to probably shock them, but in medieval times, they went even to as far as calculating how many demons were roaming the earth. And if you want to give you an exact number, that I have to get my glasses here, because unfortunately at 56 I need my glasses. And we're talking about millions of demons roaming the earth. Okay, so here we are. It will be here. Now, they calculated that there were at least 13 million 306,668 demons who are loose around the planet. This was at least what they calculated in medieval times. There was also the fact, this is also very important. The demons have their own principalities, their own soldiers. It's a legion, no? We are many because we are legion. Yeah. And there is a hierarchy. Now, Beelzebub, which is one of the main demons, under Lucifer, under Satan, he has 6,666, of course, demons working for him. This is also part of the calculations that were done. Now, regardless of those people who might think this is a matter of laughter when you hear such things, this topic is very serious, and is very serious for people who are believers and also for people who are non-believers, because the biggest trick the devil ever played on us is to let us believe he doesn't exist, as we all know. This is a famous saying. Now, these representatives of the International Association of Exorcists that went to visit Pope Leo on March 13th at the Vatican Apostolic Palace had this half-an-hour meeting in which they explained how, even in the seminaries of the Catholic Church, there is, of course, a lot of demons. And now, when you get consecrated to become a priest, in a minor, you can actually participate to minor exorcism only. Okay? Only a very few chosen priests get to become exorcists. You have to have a preparation in theology, but you also have to have a preparation in psychology, because you have to dismiss those cases where obviously the person is not is insane. I mean, it's simply. Now, I always tend to believe that even with mental illnesses, there's always an element of demonic contact working upon, the affected. My own personal experience with exorcism has been very vast, and it's been direct because I participated to exorcism.
Wow.
I was exorcised myself. I went and participated to exorcism in the Middle East, in mountains, in Italy, in monasteries, in places, and I had all kinds of experiences. So, if you want, after we can, I can give you some, just some personal experiences of mine for your audience.
Is it anything like we saw in The Exorcist?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. It's. I remember once, and this is it's quite incredible because they couldn't find a proper group of exorcists to actually quiet down this guy who was obviously possessed. He was from Africa. He was obviously in Africa. We have voodoo, the roots of voodoo. It's filled with animist religions. And so they couldn't get an exorcist. And so they said, okay, will you provide us with an exorcism? And so I went into the room and the guy was literally coming off his bed. I mean, it was rather incredible.
Wow.
And in that case, of course, I use not only the prayers, but I also use a holy relic, which I always carry on with me. I have it even now in the other room. It's a piece of the bandage of Padre Pio, which is considered the saint of the Catholic Church, which is also, though, a guy who was, when he was a monk during his life with the stigma, he was also an exorcist. I mean, he was somebody who was fighting the devil. So the fact that you are able to also use holy relics aside from the prayers is almost like, when you go into the battle with somebody, you might have a knife, or you might have a gun, or you might have a machine gun. Now, the incredible thing that happened with the Catholic Church is that, as you know, and we have discussed it many times here on the show, in the past, the Catholic Church, unfortunately, after the Second Vatican Council, which happened in the first half of the 1960s, gave birth to a church which was increasingly progressive. I talked about it, especially in Volume 12 of my Confessions, the last installment of my Confessions that, as you know, talks about the Jesuits. I talked about the Jesuits' takeover of the church, of a church which was no longer traditional, which was abandoning the traditional Latin Mass for this Novo Ordo Missa, which was basically abandoning their traditions and facilitating this way the satanic infiltration. In fact, it's not a coincidence that the Second Vatican Council ends up in December 1965, and then you have 1966, considered year zero of Satanism. And that is also the year in which that the Sabbatean Frankist of Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan. Now, from my own personal experience, I noticed that when, at the end of the 90s, the Vatican in 1999 tried to impose a new form of exorcism, there was generally a rebellion from the base of exorcists, which actually paradoxically led to the creation of this International Association of Exorcists, because then there was a guy called Father Amort, which is the guy which inspired also that movie. It is not The Exorcist. The Exorcist is another movie, and it's the first of its kind. The Exorcist is a movie which I explain also in my books, was worked out in Hollywood also with the direct support of the Jesuits. So there was a lot of know-how in the way that the movie portrayed the whole thing. Then you have other movies of importance and relevance, like The Right, for example, that came out in 2011, which is based on a book, The Right, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, which is also based on real stories. And in fact, there is also a link there to a Welsh Jesuit named Father Lucas. And so it's obvious that in the Exorcist and what they do, the Exorcists are always sought after by Hollywood, because what they do is very spectacular at times and very scary, to say the least. I remember when a few years ago, the film director of The Exorcist, in fact, did a documentary about Father Amorth filming the real exorcism, and it was pretty scary to actually, have the real exorcist, portrayed rather than the fictional ones.
Yeah.
Because what happens with Satan is that he can get into your body through you opening up to the occult, but also in an innocent way, through the Ouija board, through certain video games, through certain books on the occult that maybe shouldn't be read, and people playing around with the things they don't really know about.
Yeah.
And
I've even heard some people have said that they actually, when they make these movies, sometimes they cast spells in the movies that will, when you watch the movie, will come off if you're not strong, if you're weak or whatever, and you're like easily, influenced, because a lot of people really get scared by these movies, and I think that opens you up. But they actually put spells in the movies, some of these movies, like The Exorcist. And that's why people would like have go crazy in the movies, in that movie especially. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, lately when you go to the cinema, you are bombarded because, I went to the cinema and saw a couple of movies in the last 2 months. And all I could see in the trailers that were before the movie I chose, which was maybe a more tranquil movie compared to the others, but all the movies, they were all horror movies with evident occult symbolism. So it's almost like today, Hollywood produces much more than what happened with The Exorcist. At the time of The Exorcist, yes, you had a few movies around. You had, of course, before The Exorcist, you had Rosemary's Baby, which was a turning point also for a lot of people that understood about sectarian activities, the fact they were impregnating a woman to bear the child of the devil became a very important and shocking novelty at the time. But today you have almost 20 or 30 movies a month that talk about a variety of occult subjects, branding them as horror. So the actual movie, The Exorcist
family, Rosemary's Baby, bring that up. She wore that red dress with the white lace at the top. So you had Princess Diana and you had Princess Kate. Both of them wore that dress with their children. It's like, wow, there's like just bringing that in everywhere.
But definitely it brought a certain fashion. No? the devil wears Prada, they say. Now there is a comeback. Number 2. Okay, going back to The Devil and Father Amorth, which was this 2017 documentary, which I suggest you go and check out, by William Friedkin, which was the guy who made The Exorcist. He really brought I remember myself when I used to work with this TV station under the Vatican. There was one of my cameramen called Gianluca Tacchia, which is actually, a friend since I was very young, because I started, as you know, with working with the Catholic TV and radio, and my mother was collaborating with the Vatican radio and TV. So I was in that kind of environment. But I remember one day Gianluca came back from filming Father Amort doing an exorcist. We're talking about the 1980s here, so nobody has seen that kind of thing. He literally escaped, came to me and was like shocked. He was like, Leo, you will not believe what I saw. It was like, I couldn't stay there. I couldn't film that. I just left. And I was like, wow. So just to give you an example. Now, Russell Crowe participated in a movie, as you know, in 2023, which is called The Pope's Exorcist. And that is actually based on Father Amort, which I explain in this book, was the guy who opposed this situation of editing and diminishing the power of the exorcism. Because after having changed the various rituals of the Catholic Church based on this Second Vatican Council, the last thing they did in 1999 was to attack the rite of exorcism. And in my book, I explain all the revisions. So explaining the 99 exorcism revision to the layman. And I'm very accurate in this explanation, because I wanted to make people understand this act of sabotage. Because at one point, Father Amort said, well, what are you giving us here? Because we are not going to be able to fight Satan with this kind of ritual. We want to go back to the 1614 ritual.
Wow.
And that eventually what happened. Now, the Pope just received this group of people who follow into the footsteps of Father Amort, and who will meet up once again, like I said, in the month of May of this year, to discuss and to prepare, because every year usually in the month of May, they meet up in Rome, around 170, 200 exorcists, to discuss what is happening, to prepare, and maybe amongst them there can be also some laymen or some Christian pastors from other denominations who maybe will also like to join the battle by using those rituals which are in use in the Catholic Church. Now, like I stated earlier, this year, in an unprecedented move, this group of exorcists will actually guest Jewish rabbis, Islamic imam. So it will not be the way you fight Satan and his legion in the Islamic religion is completely different from the Catholic. And the Catholic way of exorcising is itself different from maybe the Coptic or Orthodox way. I was able to assist in the Middle East to Madame Fula's exorcism. Madame Fula and I participated, and I was myself exorcised by her. Madame Fula, regarded by the Coptic Church in Cairo at the time, I'm talking about 2003, as the number one exorcist, was able to do two kinds of exorcism. A minor exorcism, which would be if she saw that you didn't have great problems, okay, that you were not completely possessed by a powerful demon, she will simply measure you and recite a prayer, and then they will fold this measurement done with a piece of cloth will be then folded around the prayer. So that is pretty simple. Then you will have those people, like in that case, it was me, who had received a very powerful curse at the time from a black magician. And so he had launched against me something like 123 demons, I don't know, some big number of demons and so on. I think even more. And so she exorcised, and I explained that also, by with dropping liquid lead in a pan of cold water that captures your demon.
Wow.
Now, it's pretty scary because liquid lead, if it ends up on you, you can imagine, especially on you. So it is a, I mean, when she told me, she decided who she wanted to bring, and it was a kitchen in Cairo, but people were queuing all the way down to the road.
Wow.
Come to this old lady and the daughter. I remember the daughter had a T-shirt, Army of Jesus. I said, wow. It seemed like in America, in English. I was there. So we were in the days in which the situation was pretty unstable in Iraq. They had just blown up a base of Italian Carabinieri in Nasiriyah. So it was like the Middle East was pretty dense at the time. But I saw that even if she was Greek and she was working for the local Coptic church, there were Muslims there that will accept the exorcism from this Christian woman. So it was kind of interesting to see that sometimes evil makes us cross all boundaries in a way, you know? Like I stated in regards to the convention that will be held this year in the middle of May in Rome. So the lead was, first she did some purification, cleansing, and then after reciting a few prayers, she put this pan on top of my head and she poured the lead. It was incredible what happened after, because literally a demon came in the lead with the horns and it was captured. The image of the demon was in and it was, like I said, hundreds of demons with a big demon.
Wow.
And the image of the demon actually because of course liquid lead and water, and it gets immediately very hard. And at that point, she said, we captured him. And I was pretty impressed by this technique because I had 10 years earlier another exorcism by a Franciscan monk in an Italian monastery. And that, of course, was conducted following the criteria of reciting the prayers from the Romanorum Rite of 1614, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, you are, liberated from these demons through the power of prayer, of course. In this case, the power of prayer had also some kind of practical element added to it. Now, I don't know how practical would it be if you had somebody spinning with their head like Linda Blair in The Exorcist and put a finger, of blood on their head, because probably that would be a little bit. But another interesting exorcism which I go subject to, because you have to understand, I'm an exorcist because I got trained by other exorcists, but at the same time, because I fought these magical wars within the so-called Illuminati, as I explain in my books, at times I was subject to some really big doses of black magic, which in that case needed some proper exorcism. So I was sent to the city of Konya. And in the city of Konya, there was this exorcist which conducted an Islamic ritual of exorcism. So I also was able to see how they operate. Now, they consider the demons, the jinn or the ifrit, creatures of fire. So they need to freeze them in order to exorcise them from you. They recite prayers out of the Quran, around your head, and then they manage to detect how many of these demons, these genies, these ifrit are present, and then they eventually exorcise them. So that was in the city of Konya, which is the city where you have the tomb of Jalaluddin Rumi, the great Sufi.
Oh.
And it's in Turkey.
Yep.
It's a beautiful place.
Absolutely.
And I was brought to have this purification, let's say, ritual. It was an exorcism, of course. And it was an interesting experience because they had recognized that at the time I was under attack. I had just started 20 years ago with my Illuminati confessions online. And as soon as I started, they, of course, cursed me left, right, and center.
Oh, well, yeah. Wow.
As you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think I still have around here the actual picture, a photo I made of the exorcist. If you want, I can go and pick it up for you.
Yeah.
So, let me see if I can manage to pick it up.
Wow, fascinating subject from somebody that's actually been to exorcisms and has been exorcised as well. Wow.
Yeah, in various traditions also, because like I said, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not only one tradition.
Who has the best tradition for exorcisms?
This was my exorcist in Konya at the time. I don't know if he's still alive. Probably not. I mean, he was pretty old at the time. This is actually during the exorcism.
Wow.
He was reciting the prayer. As you know, I wrote a book on Islam and the eternal conflict in the Middle East, which is volume 10 of my confessions, in which I also talk a bit about my experiences in the Middle East. And I think this book is definitely relevant for what we are living today in the Middle East. So I highly advise you check it out, volume 10 of my confessions. Like I said, it's of course not a joke to approach the occult, and every now and then you can get attacked. So of course, as I have been an insider in this kind of groups and magical wars were fought all the time, then you have to cleanse yourself with an exorcism. I mean, you can cleanse yourself, of course, if it's a minor demonic attack with prayers, with going to church, with some holy water and so on. But when you have a demon which is residing in you, then you really need an exorcism. Now, you have to understand, I mean, there is a difference, evocation and invocation. Evocation, you evoke the demon outside. Invocation, you actually end up having the demon inside. So we are now living in a situation in our society in which, like Father Ripperger, I mean, I'm sure you heard about him. He's been very much on the news lately. Father Ripperger is probably currently America's #1 exorcist.
Yep.
And he himself has said, though, that he feels that it's not the devil to blame for this trend, but rather us, the humans, who are unfortunately playing with things we shouldn't play, and we are not taking seriously maybe this subject. So for Father Chad Ripperger, the blame lies primarily with people themselves. And it's not about the fact that there is more demons roaming the earth. but it's the fact that we are opening up to them more than we used to. So I think that is an interesting thing he said lately in an interview, because the demons are empowered more and more by people who commit evil deeds, but also people who are not aware of the evil they are committing, or are simply not aware of the fact that they are letting Satan in by doing things that are highly moral and dangerous for your own soul. Now, we have noticed that, you see, fortunately, people today don't seem to believe their actions have consequences in this sense. So at that point, it becomes very easy for Satan to come into their life when you don't believe in Satan. Like I stated at the beginning of the show, then, So according to these exorcists who went to visit the Pope, there is also a blame in the spread of esotericism and the occultism. Now, how this spread happens, it happens like we stated earlier. It can happen even simply playing with the Ouija board, no? Like we see also in the film The Exorcist. It's a great point of entry for the demons once you start playing with divination. So tarot cards can become also a point of entry. And of course, today we have an obsession with these various sects and practices that eventually will turn out to be dangerous. Now, apparently, during the meeting that there was at the Vatican on March 13th, Pope Leo publicly appreciated the past work of Father Gabriele Amort, the one we mentioned earlier.
Oh, great.
And because he founded, like we stated, and like I stated in this book, the International Association of Exorcists back in 1994. And when in 1999, which is, by the way, also the year that great exorcist Father Malachi Martin died, and he died in mysterious circumstances. I don't know if you know a little bit about Malachi Martin, about his mission, about what he was. I mean, he was basically a former Jesuit, or at least a Jesuit who was no longer an active Jesuit, who came to America, became rather known also in alternative media circles, even with Coast to Coast and people like George Norrie and others, publicizing what he was doing, because he was writing some books that were actually essays and others that were fictional but based on truth. He had been the secretary of Cardinal Bea, who was a Jesuit cardinal of relevance during the Second Vatican Council, but actually, after probably participating in the Second Vatican Council and apparently even being witness to some satanic activities that led to a black mass inside the Vatican,
wow.
He said, okay, I'm leaving. And he went on the other side of the pond to live here in the United States of America, where he became also a very known exorcist. And unfortunately, though, in the last day of his life, he was fighting a case of exorcism that was pretty difficult. And then suddenly, it seems like a demon pushed him down the stairs and he died when he went back home. Something happened that is still to this day not fully explained. The strange thing is that in 1999, that was the year in which the Vatican also decided to reform the rite of exorcism. And that is what happened with then Father Amor saying, we don't want, basically a gun with no bullets. You're giving us a way of fighting the devil which is not working. We need to go back to the old traditional way. In fact, he was able to impose on his exorcist the use of the traditional Roman ritual.
Now, usually the exorcisms are performed by someone that wants them. Do priests that are trained in the exorcisms, if they know someone is possessed, can they do a ritual against someone that is possessed without them being aware of it? Is that something that's done?
There has been cases in which you can deliver prayers, but those are minor exorcisms. If you're talking about a full-on case of possession, there will not be that kind of approach because it will be obvious to everybody that the person is possessed, and so it needs to be exorcised. Now, we could, of course, force an exorcism on a person who is evidently possessed and out of his mind. In the case when I, for example, delivered that exorcism to that African guy who was literally from Africa and didn't know how to talk Italian, didn't know how to talk, hardly knew how to talk English. But I had to deliver it, of course, in a language also that was close to him. So English, in that case, I did it half in English, half in Latin. But in that case, the guy was obviously not choosing himself for the exorcist. There were other people around him who said, "Leo, go and exorcise him." Gotcha. Because he was in a lunatic. I mean, he was in a mental asylum. I had to go inside I was in a mental asylum where I exorcised this guy with the doctors around me. So it was a pretty serious affair. It wasn't and that is, of course, an experience which I still held, inside me. Because then there is other forms of exorcism, minor exorcism, or at least exorcism, but are not so. There was this guy who was a member of the Supreme Council of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Italy, or Piazza del Gesù, who called me and said, "Leo, since I joined the Supreme Council," he was the archivist of the Grand Orient of Italy. And, we were chatting one day. He was giving me some of his publications and stuff. And then he said, "Leo, I have to tell you that I'm dying of a brain tumor. Since I joined the Supreme Council, I started to be affected more and more physically. And now I've been detected with a brain tumor. So I don't have much left. I would like you and an exorcist to come to my home and deliver me from this evil, because definitely," he said, "there must be somebody within the Supreme Council which has affected me with this evil." Wow. So I called my friend Fortunato Luciano Chandra, who is an official recognized Knight of the Vatican, Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, Knight of St. Sylvester Pope. I mean, he's like very high up in all these knighthood orders, and he knows the rituals by heart. I mean, I went there with my little booklet, reading in Latin the thing. He knew it by heart. So for me, it was very impressive to see an exorcist like him, because I tell you, often even the Catholic priest that I saw read on the books, they don't know it by heart. This guy knew the Latin ritual by heart. It was amazing. In any case, we conduct the whole ritual. And it was very touching. It was done in a very beautiful way. There wasn't, like in the case of that African guy, he was like lifting off bed, and it was demonic. It was completely demonic.
Incredible.
In this case, no. It was simply a guy who wanted to cleanse himself from this demonic element. Now, you have also, I've witnessed in the Jewish ghetto in Rome, Jewish exorcism. Jewish exorcisms are also different. They have developed complex ways for, of course, getting rid of evil spirits. The interesting element in the Jewish exorcism is that they exorcise what they call the dibuk, which is basically, in their concept, we are talking here not about a fallen angel, but rather a malicious possessing spirit that is a dislocated soul of a dead person who is persecuting a living person. That is their concept of a demon that can possess you in the majority of cases. So where you have the jinn, the ifrit in the Islamic tradition, which can be deemed as simply fallen angels because in fact they are parallel. It's with the Jewish tradition is a little bit different. Though we have, for example, I think in the New Testament the devil is referred 52 times. In the Old Testament we have a number of demons, including Baal, which have a very relevant anti-God role. Baal is the one, which like Moloch, it's like basically Moloch. The two are interchangeable and more or less parallel. And of course, people sacrifice children to guarantee themselves fertility rights during these fertility rights. However, Baal appeared also in the Epstein files, not linked to anything demonic, but apparently to a bank account, which was... But still, if we go back to what I said earlier, the devil is really the guy who is in charge of the money. So, maybe Baal had something to do with it. Now, some people said there was a misunderstanding of sorts, but clearly the name Baal appears in this email that was released with the Epstein files. And Baal became the protagonist of Iran's anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, because they built this big Baal effigy and burned it with the flag of Israel and America, and they accused the Western world, of course, of doing a war against them on behalf of the devil and Jeffrey Epstein, who was a worshipper of Baal. Now, if we have to be honest, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was a worshipper of Baal because he was a pedophile, and what he was doing was monstrous, and we don't know still the entirety of it. I mean, we are still searching for bodies in Zorro Ranch, and who knows if they're going to let us find them. But in any case, during the February 2026 rallies that marked the 47th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, and we were, about to start then this war, which unfortunately is ongoing, they were referring very clearly to Baal, and they adorned Baal with symbols of Israel, photos of Trump, and of course they chanted death to Israel. Now, Iran is a very particular place because Iran apparently has fought Satanism in the last few years. Imagine that there was in 2024, Iran arrested 250 people for Satanism. The Satanic network that was caught with symbols of Satan and all the rest within Iran. They were arrested, they even confiscated their cars, they confiscated everything, but apparently it was a big deal, and it came out, the Iranian police announced it, that they arrested 146 men and 115 women who were in an undesirable and obscene condition with emblems, signs, and symbols of Satanism. This is, like I said, in Iran. At the same time, Iran has been claiming, even their official state media, that, of course, there is in act what they define as Zionist sorcery. Now, if we go back to my latest book on Jeffrey Epstein, as you know, I explain the various branches of Zionism, the relationship ultimately with the Sabbatean Frankists, and the Sabbatean Frankists are now being increasingly discussed in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm glad that I was the first one to write this book to expose such connection, because it's a very important connection. Now, the Khamenei official site, the Khamenei, the past Ayatollah who was killed, now we have the son, even had the official commentary about what they defined as the work of occult sciences that was moved by the Zionists. So we're talking about people who are very into that kind of thing. The Mer news agency reported at one point in, I think at the beginning of this month, that the confrontation with Israel, and so with America, extends beyond military, cyber, and diplomatic and cognitive fronts. And that's why they called it, again, a war of occult sciences. And the rhetoric that they are pushing is that the enemy is not simply human, but that these are humans who are mixed with genies. Now, what does that mean for the ordinary folk who has never heard about genies, who have never heard about Islamic beliefs, and so it's a bit confusing maybe. Now, the jinn it's a very particular thing, because a little bit like the angels, you have the angels who are fallen and the one who are not fallen. In the case of the Quran, there is genies who actually converted to Islam. And in fact, if you go to Mecca, there is actually an entire an entire area dedicated to the jinn. And you are forbidden to enter this area. So it's kind of rather interesting that they actually claim that this area is, this mosque dedicated to the jinn can't be, frequented by humans. And I know of a human who actually attempted to go and pray there. And I tell you, by their own personal witness to what happened, after a few minutes of them, bowing down and doing the prayers, an invisible force patted them like this on the shoulder.
Wow.
And then told them, this is not place for human. Go back to your mosque. This is like our own mosque. So then you have, of course, the genies and the ifrit who are demonic, who are satanic, who are tempting, who are working for Shaitan. Not Satan, but Shaitan is Satan. No? And so the fact that they describe Iran's enemies as both jinn and human is because at one point it came out many years ago. I'm talking about 2016, 20 years ago, actually. When I started my Illuminati confession, this news came in that the leader of this important Islamic group, which actually resides here in Pennsylvania, Fethullah Gulen, who works for the CIA, and in fact is protected by the CIA, even after their own, because he has an immense and powerful Turkish cult operating worldwide, and, of Sunni Muslims, and he's part of the chain of 40 of the golden chain. It's a whole thing, descendants of the prophet, and blah blah blah. In any case, this guy said that the CIA was working with the jinn. He actually stated that officially during one of his public talks, and because his public talks were being recorded, and so this became an official statement. But it's no wonder. I mean, when you had in the American military people with like Michael Aquino, the former head of the Temple of Set, now he's no longer with us. But I mean, that gives you an idea. I mean, he was in charge of mind wars. So if you have the genies you add the genies into the equation, it's just like part of the whole thing. No? Now, in regards to this multidimensional struggle it's like in Iran, the Mer website, I mean, we're talking about Islamic Republic official messaging from the website, is claiming evidence of a supernatural warfare with America. They also they called a multidimensional struggle against Israel, alongside the cyber, diplomatic, and psychological fronts. And Khamenei's site, the late Khamenei site, even expanded on the team, because there was this Ayatollah Hamad Adedi who said, the Jews, and in particular the Zionists, pursue metaphysical matters extensively, and asserted that Mossad engages in such practices as well.
Wow.
So, on the contrary of what we are obviously seeing from the mainstream news, parallel to our own view of the war, which is materialistic, now we are expecting maybe boots on the ground, Marines going this, blah, blah, blah. Then you have, parallel to all this, a metaphysical war. And it's not really discussed by our own media, but it's discussed by Israeli media and by Iran media. Which is pretty fascinating if you think about it.
Definitely.
And there is actually, let me see if I can, I don't have because it's in Farsi, it's not in English language, but there is definitely also articles on the Jerusalem Post that we can cite. Let me share one with you, for example, just to show you. Iran official claim Israel used the occult and supernatural spirits during 12-day war. This is the Jerusalem Post. And they're talking about Abdullah Ganji, former editor of REG-linked newspaper Javan, that has 150,000 followers. And they talk about, this is an article from July, and they talk about senior Iranian official claims that Israel deployed the occult and supernatural spirits during their war with Iran. This is an old article. Now I'm going to show you a more latest one, if I find it. Always from the Jerusalem Post.
Do you believe that, or is that disinformation?
No. In the Middle East, this stuff, it's taken very seriously. It's no joke. I mean, we here in the West are gonna, have a more pragmatic attitude. But let me show you here this article that just came out, I think, a few days ago. Iran revives its Zionist sorcery claims in propaganda against it. Now, they claim it's propaganda also. No, watch. This is an article from March 19th. So pretty recent, 10 days ago.
Wow. Look at that.
So there is a parallel war going on that is not really, and I think that today in our show we were able to at least touch on this, because most people don't really want to discuss these topics.
Yeah, well, I think with your direct experience, that really was very enlightening. I never talked to anybody with direct experience.
I had direct experience even with Iranians, as Turks. I mean, the Middle East is for me. I personally find the Middle East a great place to hang out. But I mean, maybe because of my ancestry, maybe because I'm from south of Italy and we used to be an emirate, the Sicily. But I find it like a place where certain things, especially the metaphysical world, the fight against evil is taken much more seriously than here in the Western world. Especially in America that was described even by Aleister Crowley as a spiritual desert. It's very difficult here in America to explain certain things because you have been there in the Middle East. You know that believing God is a very serious thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can't offend God in those countries. You end up dead.
Yep.
Immediately.
So on the metaphysical realm, I think a lot of people have awakened. Let's get your thoughts on this. The adrenochrome, Hollywood really into adrenochrome and, very high level business people. I'm not going to name any names, but, they seem to be doing this adrenochrome, the blood of people that have been adrenaled, scared, and they drink that blood. Kind of like vampires or something.
I tell you one thing. I mean,
yeah,
I never really had this experience with adrenochrome, so I'm not able to confirm it or disregard it. But I have personal experience of people within the entertainment world who regularly use the blood of young children in blood they infuse themselves with this blood. They throw away for example, people like Mick Jagger, these people make extensive use of the blood of young children.
Wow.
And it is actually well known that it's a technique that was even used in sports to change your blood because, of course, it brings your oxygen levels high and you're complete. But these people who make extensive use of drugs, and of course it's like throwing away your blood and picking the blood of young children. It's very vampiric in itself. You don't need adrenochrome to understand that even that kind of practice is pretty evil, if you think.
Right. There's that movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp, and
when at one point he comes up with the chrono.
What is this group called? The Hollywood Vampires. So it's a lot of that seems like it's in our face, but people don't, like you're talking about. We're here in America, it's just like a spiritual desert. People just don't accept that that's probably real.
Yeah, they don't accept that it's probably real. But now we have this incredible increase of evil, which is facing even the Vatican, and they have actually said that there has been an enormous increase in the request for exorcism. So because the exorcism, like I explained, they have to be highly specialized. Here in America, up until 6 years ago, you didn't have many. You could actually not count them on two hands, but you might have had only a few in the whole of America. Now, apparently, there is been a rise in actually presence of even exorcists in the diocese, and there are hundreds now of exorcists already, and they want more.
Yeah,
this demonstrates that yes, the facade is the facade of a spiritual desert. But at the same time, it seems like this demonic problem is really affecting people and affecting them to a point that they are requesting their bishops to intervene and to have on-duty exorcists, basically on call 24/7. This is what they are requiring the Pope to give them.
Mm.
It's not just there's been like a 600% increase in the numbers of exorcisms.
Do you think there's more demons now, or do you think that that the demons are just getting flushed off one person and going to somebody else, or what do you think?
I don't think, like Chad Ripperger said, like Father Chad Ripperger said, who is himself a great exorcist. I know that he's a wealth of knowledge, also theologically speaking, so I have a lot of respect for him. It's not really about more demons. It's about how the demons reach you, how they are able to reach you in a much more easy way thanks to the internet. If, for example, I don't know, you have a youngster who wants to simply wander around and find a group of Satanists who want to maybe spend the weekend sacrificing a black cat. I'm not here making up this, of course. I'm not saying it's, but maybe sometimes they can even sacrifice something else, which is much worse. There has been cases in which they push themselves, and of course, at that point, they get to human sacrifice. But in any case, it's more easy to connect. In fact, that's the reason why the International Association of Exorcists this year is focusing so much on the artificial intelligence also. Because artificial intelligence apparently has been able to help pedophiles, Satanists in particular, by even like they make videos using the AI in which children are exposed to these shocking satanic rituals. Of course, it's fiction, but it is a diabolical fiction. I mean, some really sick-minded people use the AI to make these videos. And at the same time, apparently, this year, what they will be discussing in May in Rome is the fact that the AI is providing also a new way to cover up their activities. So, and they also, there is another thing that this year they want to discuss also in relation to the AI, the Order of the Nine Angles. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Mm-hmm. I've discussed them in my books. I discussed them in particular in volume 5 of my Confessions. They are particularly active in the deep web, so you can't really find them. Wow. Just by Googling, because they do illegal activities. They've been infiltrating the American military. You can go and check if you Google now. You can check articles on BBC and other things about Order of the Nine Angles, and maybe we can find something to show to our audience, because this Order of the Nine Angles is really into human sacrifice, and what they do, they use encrypting messaging services and whatnot to communicate. And because of the extensive use of the deep web, they seem to be impossible to detect. I mean, they have done some really evil things, right? And still nobody really knows who is heading them, or because they are really hiding very well. And you see, there is a lot of material on them if you actually go and search for it. And they are also connected to Nazi groups, which is also a way, if you want to detect them, they are very active apparently in the right wing. They were founded in the UK in the 70s. They are known with the acronym ONA. But in volume 5 of my Confessions, I actually show their inner teachings. And they are, I mean, it's not some kind of, how you say, make-or-believe group. They actually pick up from very ancient practices. You see, US soldiers, Ethan Melzer, accused of planning attack on unit, also with the Order of the Nine Angles. So here we are talking about sectarian activities which are becoming actually very dangerous. It's not... and there was the case, I don't remember now the name. There was a case that was pretty. Let me see if I find it. Which was pretty, in which they picked up. Here, I have it. Let me show it to you. Share it on the screen. It's a past article from my website. The FBI issued a warning against a Satanist extortion cult targeting children online, which is the Order of the Nine Angles. This is a photo. Wow. Federal Bureau of Investigation issued an official warning on September 12, 2023, stating that a newly discovered pedophilic Satanist extortion cult is targeting children online. The FBI said in the recent public notice that the cult also uses a variety of internet platforms to find new victims, including Roblox, Discord, Twitch, SoundCloud, and Telegram. And also takes on many names, including 676, 764, and all these code names. So it's very difficult. It's a typical camouflage technique. And then you have, of course, a citation from my volume 5. And so, I mean, this is a real problem, because apparently the Vatican is going to be discussing this Order of the Nine Angles in the context of exorcism. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we are talking here about real evil. I mean, not a joke. I mean, it's a perverse ideology. They arrested in New York in November 2021 a 23-year-old who was part of this Order of the Nine Angles, who was found basically, I mean, these people are violent. I mean, they are preparing themselves to sacrifice whomever to Satan. They actually from what I understood, they even use old grimoires, like there is this old grimoire dedicated to the red dragon, Dragon Rouge, and it's basically a grimoire in which you have to do a human sacrifice in order to achieve something from Satan, no? And so there was actually this, they target minors also. That is the big problem here. And there is a lot of investigations that are still currently happening also, of course, at a criminal level. Then you have, of course, then the Vatican wanting to bring in the exorcists, because there is people that need to be exorcised from all this evil. I'm not saying that it's only a problem with Order of the Nine Angles. You can have also seemingly innocent New Age groups that tell you, oh, we are into crystals, we're into this, we're into that, but then they actually open themselves to these demonic forces.
Yeah. So I used to do one-on-ones with people, and I worked with this one guy, and he was of the belief that he was a fallen angel and that he had converted through Archangel Michael to the good side. Have you ever encountered anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, very recently, I was sent a photo of a guy who in Italy was participating to a sectarian, to a ritual in a temple of this sect who claimed to be in contact with Archangel Michael and all that. But in reality, it was obviously another cult. It was a satanic cult. Even if they claim the contrary, because I mean, when you put yourself with the image of Archangel Michael, you are, of course, putting yourself with the defender of the faith, which is used by all the exorcists to crush the devil, to crush the dragon. This is not a name that is just brought up like this. To actually use it in that context. So, where did you hear about it?
So it was. I used to do one-on-one counseling with people, and this gentleman was like, I was a fallen angel, and I used to do this. I've had many lives doing this and that, but I have converted. And there's many of us fallen angels now that are converting and we're connected with Archangel Michael now. That was the story.
But how can they connect with Archangel Michael if they are fallen angels? In a way, if you think about it, it's already a paradox, because fallen angels should connect with Lucifer, should connect with Satan, should connect with Beelzebub, should connect with Leviathan, should connect with Baal, should connect with demons who are fallen, not in the heavens defending the faith. It doesn't make any sense. So if you think about it, their whole theological asset is wrong. Eschatologically, they are very confused. It's a little bit like Peter Thiel. He went to Rome, and I wrote an article about it, because he went to Rome to do these lectures on the Antichrist, close to the Vatican. However, his whole eschatological interpretation of the Antichrist is completely erroneous, because he is actually stating that the AI and robotics will defend us from the Antichrist. Rather than being part of the problem, he claims to be part of the solution. And like Alexander Dugin said, it's a completely erroneous interpretation. Because it's like saying Cyber Satan is good, let's embrace Cyber Satan. And Peter Thiel, unfortunately, is part of the problem. I explain in my book his connection with Epstein, and now his connection with Epstein, after the latest files came out, was even more clear in relation even to the possibility of starting together a secret society and so on. Peter Thiel is from Frankfurt. He's not a Jewish person, but he is from a family of Christians connected to the Sabbatean Frankists who historically were present in Frankfurt. In my book, I explained that Jacob Frank created in Offenbach, which is in the outskirts there in Frankfurt, in the metropolitan area of Frankfurt, a court. He was given a castle in which he then molded and crafted the future of the banking cartel, including the Rothschild, the Schiffs, and all the rest. So Peter Thiel is very dangerous, and that is a big problem also for somebody like J.D. Vance, who claims to be so righteous and so Christian. I don't understand this guy. I mean, how can you associate with somebody who is absolutely the opposite of anything you are, publicly you're stating that even the UFOs and the aliens are all demons, but then after you hang out with Peter Thiel, it doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. It's just like a little bit confusing.
Yeah, definitely. So, Statue of Liberty, the bringer of light, and of course, Statue of Liberty is chained, like the fallen angels are supposedly chained. What are your thoughts of Statue of Liberty? Is that Lucifer, or?
Statue of Liberty was donated by the French Freemasons.
Right.
Now, there was a very close relationship, especially between Benjamin Franklin, who, as you know, was a diplomat for a time in France and who was trying to promote the cause of an independent United States of America. I mean, Benjamin Franklin is regarded as one of the fathers of our great nation. Mm-hmm. We even have him portrayed on one of our banknotes. So even if he was never a president. But Benjamin Franklin was connected with the occult. Benjamin Franklin was connected with the occult. Benjamin Franklin was connected with a lodge, the Lodge de Neuf Sources, which itself in France at that time was very much connected also with people who, he was very close to, for example, Count Cagliostro, who himself in his lodges was trying to evoke the seven angels through scrying and through the use of little children and virgins that will eventually become the mediums of these spirits. So the donation that was later given of this Statue of Liberty, it's obviously controversial because it's a donation from those forces that in a way were fighting the monarchies and the church to establish something independent. The final product, though, it's a great republic on which we stand, which we are very proud of, and we want to protect. But Benjamin Franklin, like also somebody in the chat is stating, was also in the Hellfire Clubs, which themselves were pretty much, I mean, talking about Jeffrey Epstein, let's talk about the Hellfire Clubs. I mean, these things have been going on for hundreds of years.
Right.
So it seems like at one point when they went into the old apartment of Benjamin Franklin, was it in London or stuff? They dig out a few bodies. So it's there is definitely something with these connections which is not too good. So the Statue of Liberty will probably have a lot of occult significance for these Masons who obviously gave it, but at the same time, for us, the symbolism of it is, for me, always of. I mean, when I went there in 1982, it was my first time in the United States of America. I went up at this 151-foot statue. It was still possible to walk. I don't know if you ever went there up all the way up, walking in this ladder that goes around.
Oh yeah.
And then you get all the way up, and at the time you could actually go all the way into the thing. It was pretty scary because it was an old statue made of material that, I mean, it wasn't a modern thing. So I mean, I thought it was a little bit precarious. In fact, after that, I remember they closed it, and I think they worked on it for a few years. And I don't think you are allowed anymore to go all the way into the. But definitely the symbolism and everything, I mean, represents the libertas, the goddess of freedom. And I think that for me that is more important than any other occult connections that might be ascribed to it.
Yeah, that Ole Demigard on, he basically pointed out that it was Lucifer. It's like it looks. You go with the Rothschilds. They have that statue of Lucifer. It looks very similar. It's got a strong jawline. The boobies are very, like Lucifer, I guess, is, trans. So,
well, I mean, there is a Masonic legacy. It's an American landmark, but actually it's 305 feet tall, the whole thing. So it's pretty taller than what I stated. But it is definitely symbolic of, I think, the alliance with French Freemasonry. And in fact, the guy involved into the donation, I mean, it was it belonged to the Lodge Alsace-Lorraine in Paris. So it was actually an official Masonic donation to the United States of America. It wasn't just like, an object.
Right.
There was something a little bit deeper in it. I mean, the idea that they commissioned this great gift and this whole thing for the century of the Declaration of Independence, I think it was very important for the French because in a way the French had helped the American independence against the British. And so in a way they were reiterating that support and it was, by the way, very interesting the fact that in the exact period in which the Statue of Liberty was donated by the French Freemasons in the 1870s, the actual French Freemasonry, the Grand Orient of France, was breaking from the United Lodge of England. They were actually going their own way by no longer recognizing in the regularity of Freemason, you have to have God and you have to have a volume of the sacred law, which is either the Bible or another holy book. from that moment onwards, they shifted towards a more agnostic version of Freemasonry, without the obligation of, you were not subject to believe in God any longer. When you enter a French Masonic lodge, it broke Freemasonry into two distant traditions that still exist to this day: the continental Freemasonry, which is connected to the Grand Orient of France, and instead the regular Freemasonry, which is traditionally connected to the United Great Lodge of England, which still requires the belief in God in their lodges. So it's rather interesting that in that period of time, this gift was given to the United States of America. But the interpretation of it as something satanic, that I prefer to stay with my more traditional symbolism of it, because I think it's a great symbol for the United States of America.
Yeah, so change the subject a little bit again. You talked about the relic that you have of Father Padre Pio.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So he was a great guy. Now I have Tracy and I have a friend that is super psychic, and she channeled Padre Pio, not necessarily channeled him, but actually, had these visitations and conversations with him. And Padre Pio, she said that Padre Pio was the reincarnation of Pontius Pilate.
I think that's quite an interesting connection that Pontius Pilate. No, I can tell you one interesting story about this relic which I received, a piece of the bandage of Padre Pio, which, by the way, I have in the other room. Christy, let's see. Can you give me the Padre Pio thing?
Oh, so cool.
The Padre Pio thing. I'm going to show it to you, because this is an official relic which is actually signed by the head of the Franciscan friars to be used only for exorcism. So here it is. That actually is kept in a. This is the relic. So here you have the officiality of it. Which is basically Beato. You see, it says the name Beati Pia Petralcina, because at the time he was not yet a saint, he was a Beato, with the signing of the head of the friars, that this is a genuine piece. And then inside you have this, which is a piece of the actual bandage word on his stigmata.
Wow.
And it's kept in a thing here.
Beautiful.
Then you have, of course, also the medal that was given.
Oh, beautiful. And
this was given to me, it's no longer, it just died recently, by the guy who the brother of his grandfather was the doctor of Padre Pio. And so he was left with a bunch of these bandages. And then the Vatican, when they nominated him first Beato and then Saint, of course, reclaimed and then put together like this, because, of course, this is a weapon in the hands of an exorcist against Satan. It's an official weapon. So it's kept in a certain way, let's say. I hope that today we gave your audience some extra.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Some extra.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's Great chatting in the audience with good information. Wow. Like I said, I've never met anybody that actually has done or has had exorcism done on them. So
I think that it's very important in this day and age that we are living here in the proximity of probably the arrival of the final Antichrist, and with the rise of Satanism, which is now being acknowledged also by the Vatican. And it's an important acknowledgement, because I remember that 5 years ago, when we were in the midst of the pandemic, I wrote on my website that there will be an increase in cases of possession, and the Vatican instead dismissed me by saying, "Oh, there is less cases now." I said, "Wait and see. Just leave your children alone in front of the computer for a couple of years, and let's see what happens." And I was completely right, unfortunately. And now there is the need for these exorcists to go and do their job. While we have to separate here, the Vatican, which is made of administrative power, of Masonic power, of worshipping of money and power, which is prevalent amongst the cardinals, with the people like Father Chad Ripperger, who himself acknowledged that there is Satanism in the Vatican, or Father Amort, who even confirmed to people I know that there is Satanists who practice Satanism in the Vatican. So we are at a turning point in our history where we really need to be aware that this evil is spreading, especially for the younger generation. So thank you so much for having dedicated today's show to this very important topic. God bless you all, and we will hopefully see each other soon. Check out my website, leozagami.com, for my latest articles. And of course, you will find also the links to my latest books. Take care, guys.
Take care. Thank you.
All the best.